So if you're listening to this talk today, it's because you've developed from a single fertilised cell called a zygote. And when you were a zygote, you contained 23 chromosomes from your mum and 23 chromosomes from your dad. You are therefore the product of one sperm from dad and one ovum from mum. If you have a brother or sister, they develop from a different zygote, formed when a different sperm fertilised a different ovum. But of course we're not our siblings, we are ourselves. And that zygote, which was the early you, the early self, developed into a full body, containing a brain. In fact, it contains your brain. The awareness and consciousness you are now experiencing is an emergent property generated by that brain. The brain that was genetically programmed at the time of your conception. So just how likely is it that I am me and not my brother or sister? Because if my zygote was formed from another sperm or ovum, I would no longer be me with my brain and my consciousness, but I would be my sibling and I would not exist. To answer this question, we need to talk about numbers. Now, normal seminal fluid contains 20 to 300 million individual sperm cells per mil of seminal fluid. And indeed, a sperm count of less than 20 million per mil is classified as a low sperm count and will result in reduced fertility. Now, a typical ejaculation contains 2 to 5 mils of seminal fluid, meaning between 40 to 1,500 million, that's 1.5 billion, individual sperm cells have the potential to fertilise an ovum as a result of an individual sexual encounter. And practically, the Open University estimate that 80 to 300 million sperm cells per ejaculation is a good numerical working estimate of the number of individual sperm cells. And this means we are safe to approximate a conservative figure of an average fertile man producing about 100 million sperm cells per day. Now, of course, sex can occur on any of the 7 days of the week, any of the 365 days of the year. And if it's assumed that most men become fathers between the age of 20 to 40 years, this gives a 20-year window of opportunity for the generation of a new individual. So 100 million sperm per day, multiplied by the 365 days of the year, multiplied by 20 years, gives a total of 7.3 to the 10. That's 7.3 with 10 noughts on the end. Individual sperm cells produced. Had your mum's ovum been fertilised by a different sperm, you would no longer be you, but any one of innumerable potential brothers or sisters. For example, if the zygote that was me was fertilised by a sperm containing an X chromosome instead of my Y chromosome, I would no longer be me, but my sister. And yet here I am speaking, here you are listening. We are the product of one specific sperm fertilising one specific ovum. And as a result, we are here experiencing reality. We are not our brothers or sisters. Your existence and individual cognition becomes even less likely when mum is taken into consideration. Now, when your mother herself was a fetus, she probably generated 6 to 7 million ova. This had to decrease to about 1 million when she was born, with about 300,000 of these ova surviving to puberty, with the possibility of being released and being fertilised and forming you. In order to form your individualised zygote, the correct ovum had to mature and be released to be fertilised by the correct sperm. This means that the possibility of you being generated as an individual, as opposed to your sibling, was 7.3 to the 10, the number of your dad's sperm, multiplied by 300,000, the number of your mum's ova, giving your existence a probability of 1 chance in 2.19 to the power of 13. In other words, 2190,000,000,000,000,000,000 of coming into existence as an individual. This makes winning the jackpot in the UK National Lottery of 1 chance in a little over 1 in 45 million look like child's play. Of course, this figure of 2.19 to the 13 assumes your mum and dad existed. And of course, their lives as individuals had an equal level of improbability of emerging from their parents. Then, of course, your parents had to meet and choose to reproduce. And this same level of mathematical improbability could be extended back through the generations, generating essentially incomprehensible numbers of improbability. So let's suppose your grandfather was late home from work one evening, delaying the time of the intercourse that generated your father, even by a few minutes. This means it is extremely improbable that the same sperm cell would have fertilised your grandmother's ovum, meaning your father would have been your uncle, and so you could not have come into existence. The logic of this thinking is that essentially any incident that occurred in the past to a parental generation had the potential to change the individual offspring produced. And as lives interact, even by so-called butterfly effects, this would in turn change the individual children produced by other people. As a result, if any potential history had been different to the history that actually transpired, you would not exist. Had King Harold won the Battle of Hastings, none of us listening to this article would exist. That one change in history would have changed the individuals which comprised all subsequent generations. Change any significant event in history and none of us would exist. If there had been no world wars, no Black Death, no Roman invasions, then we would not individually exist. Indeed, even apparent insignificant events that altered the timing of a sexual procreating act would change all of the subsequent individuals who compromise humanity because of these interacting and cascading interactions between people. The planet would still be populated, of course, but by entirely different individuals. These individuals would not be you and me, but our relatives. Human cognition would still be experienced, just not by us. And indeed, as we go further back in time, increasingly minor events would lead to cascading, interactive consequences, which would change which sperm fertilised which ovum. And yet, here we are. So, to my mind, these facts generate two possible deductions. Firstly, our individual existence is indescribably improbable. Or secondly, there is more to our lives than personhood and can be explained by myriad biological chance events.